deck. So this is the Kirkwood, as we are being known at the moment, and we support life. So if we can move on, please. Thanks, Michaela. So I'm Chris Newbery, I'm the HR manager at Kirkwood. I've been here for 4 years now, and I think when I met Anne-Marie, it became clear to me quite quickly that we were missing a bit of a trick, to be quite honest, with our offering, if you like, for employees in particular. So next slide, please, Michaela. So I just wanted to start by telling you a little bit about Kirkwood. So Kirkwood aims to improve quality of life for local people against all the odds. When time is short, we help everyone in our care to live well and make the most of every single day. We make the complex simple by focusing on what is important, and we support families and loved ones to live on and live well. We are Kirkwood and we support life, and that is really the tagline that we're using at the moment. It's about improving the lives for the people that we support. And then just to put that in context, we really should be doing the same for our employees as much as we can as well. Otherwise, we get a disconnect between what we're providing for our service users and their families and loved ones and our employees. Next slide, please. And this is just a picture of a gentleman who is working with Lisa, one of our physios. We've got like a sensory garden at the hospice. There's a huge garden over the other side as well, but I just wanted to pop this in to sort of show some of the stuff that goes on with individuals. So next slide, please. So the Kirkwood in numbers. Give you a little feel about the complexity of the organisation that we have. So in terms of our places, we have one hospice building, which is in Dalton, in Huddersfield. That is where our inpatient unit is, where our support and therapy day centre, if you like, is, where our family care centre is. Most of the stuff is based at Dalton. However, we also have 21 shops based all over the borough, right from Marsden up to Dewsbury and Batley. We have one separate office facility, which is near Huddersfield Town Centre, which is where our fundraising team and anyone else who wants to be based is based. We've been using that quite extensively through COVID, actually, just because it's been a big space, so we've been able to socially distance in there, so it's been good. And we also have a coffee shop, which is in Denbydale, which is quite near me, so that's nice to be able to host meetings there and things like that. And that's at the library in Denbydale. In terms of our people, we have 220 employees. So doing everything from nursing to caretakers, HR manager, whatever you want to chuck in there, we're becoming quite a large organisation, I think, to support the number of people that we ambitiously want to support. It's our ambition to double the number of people that we support over the next 10 years. So we've got quite ambitious objectives, and we can't do that without the people that we've got, and from recruiting new people as well. Allied to that, I've got 45 bank workers, so these are occasional staff that work in all over the place. So a lot of in retail, as you'd imagine, but also on the nursing side of life as well, and in many other settings. And allied to that, and perhaps most importantly, our 800 plus volunteers. Kirkwood started as a voluntary organisation back in the 80s. And that was how we formed, and they still form very much a crucial part of what we do, and that's thousands of hours of unpaid work every year that we're so grateful for. So next slide, please. So I just wanted to share some recent research with you, and this is from a report that the CIPD commissioned in conjunction with Sheffield University, and the links are at the bottom that you can access. But this really amazed me when I first read this, and this came through in my people management, which is like our industry rag that we get through the post every month. It's what you pay your subscription for, basically, as part of the CIPD. And there's lots of articles, and this one really struck me. I couldn't believe that 3.7 million employees are considered carers as well as being employees. And actually, even more crazy is that 72% of that 3.7 million are working full-time when they were questioned. So they're doing full-time jobs and caring at the same time. These people are just Trojans, especially when you consider that 32% of those 3.7 million are providing more than 30 hours a week of care. So they're effectively doing 2 full-time jobs. And this has to have an effect on people. So one of the effects is that 25% of these people said they were thinking of giving up their job. 900,000 people thinking of giving up their job. We've seen the unemployment stats today that have come out from the government, and there's 1.5 million people unemployed, classed as unemployed in the country. If you think about if we added 900,000 to that as well, it'd be horrendous. So this can't continue. So next slide, please, Michaela.
Sorry, it's stuck.
It's okay, we'll give it a minute. Just to say, there's also on that link there. There's a guide to carers that the CIPD have put in place, and I've had another read of it just this morning, and it's really good. There's loads of really good tips on there. So I touched on that I read this research recently, and I've got to mention COVID, haven't we? Because it's what's happening in the world at the moment. There's nothing else happening anywhere, of course. And really, one of the interesting things that came out of this was the kind of idea that if you're someone that's got kids, and I'm lucky, I've got a 2-year-old, and she's got a fairly self-sufficient playing, and I don't really need to do a great deal with it. But if you've got kids that are needing to be homeschooled, I think it really gives you an appreciation of the kind of input of trying to manage a job and perhaps do a bit of homeschooling. And I do wonder if this COVID-ness at the moment, and more people having to look after more people at home whilst working at home, has maybe shone a bit of a light on what carers do. And I just wanted to highlight some of the recent things. So obviously you've social isolation, visiting restrictions. The grieving process is completely odd at the moment for a lot of people when you consider how funerals are managed at the moment. One person in my team lost a mum recently, and the funeral was managed as best as it could, but they were only allowed 15 people, and they did like a live stream to people that couldn't be there. And to me, that just sounds really, really weird. So we're in strange times, but I think out of these strange times, it makes people perhaps have a bit of a reality check on what's important. And that's certainly been the case for me, and I hope a lot of other organisations. So next slide, please, Michaela. All this stuff is really hard. We know it's really hard on people. Our own staff surveys are telling us that people are having are less well mentally at the moment, and I think most workplaces will be the same when you consider what they've had to cope with. I've listed a few here: burnout, well-being issues, employment worries, financial worries, inhibited performance. People who are very engaged in their work, if they can't do their job properly, will worry about that. They will be very paranoid about their performance if they know they're not doing the job as well as they can, and it just leads to worry, and we don't talk about it enough. But if we did, how cool would it be? We could have open conversations, we could have better trust at work, we could have support and compassion, increased engagement and effectiveness of employees. And it's about that cultural shift from saying, yeah, work is really important and that's all that matters, to saying, well, actually, if we can make you comfortable in work and make the environment more supportive, more compassionate, you're going to do a better job. You're going to do a better job. You've got to, because you're happier, you're more comfortable, you're not got worry going on all the time. And that must make a difference to people. Andrew, I think, mentioned before about the retention of staff, but it's the little odd days of sickness that people might have to take, that we can perhaps look at in a different way. Maybe they're not sick, maybe they need to look after a relative. Maybe we can use carers leave for that, instead of them feeling guilty about being sick. Next slide, please. So, the next point I suppose I'm making is about how we look after our carers. Now, the biggest point here is that we're a work in progress. We ain't the finished article. We're doing our best. To be honest, the pandemic's got in the way of it. But we probably would have done more if this thing hadn't happened. But we are where we are. So I don't want to sit here and say, yeah, we've done everything perfect and we're the model employer. Because you know what, we're not. We want to be a model employer. We want to be an employer of choice within Kirkwood and beyond. And this is one of the things that we can easily put in place to sort of enable us to look after employees better. So we're an ongoing case. However, we do have a supportive and a very person-centered culture. We understand the importance of caring, because guess what? It's kind of what we do as an organisation. And many of our roles can be flexible. So that's a great starting point. This feels like a really, really good place to start when you consider those things. So what have we done? Because that's all the cultural stuff, and that still needs development, and it still needs work, and you need to constantly be on the guard, I suppose, with regards to organisational culture, because you want to breed that professional but caring and compassionate culture, and that values base, if you like. And what we decided to do are 2 weeks paid carers leave for people, which felt like quite a big step. Now, we were obviously aware in the background there was legislation going through in the EU about carers leave and whether it would be paid or unpaid, and I think we're probably looking at some kind of statutory leave as a government stance in the future. But we decided, actually, no, values-based decision, we need to make this paid leave for those people. We are putting in place training for managers, and we're putting in place awareness for employees. So the kind of training for managers and the awareness for employees is probably actually more important than having the paid leave. Diane mentioned before that the paid leave was nice to have in her back pocket as something to know that she could rely on. And I think that's very true of paid leave. If people know it's there, they then don't worry so much. They don't have worry all the time because they know they've got it there just in case. Most people probably won't use it. But what we hope is that people do use it, and they use it instead of things like taking odd days sick. And we hope that through doing that, they don't feel guilty for taking a carer's day because they have to say that it's sick leave, because previously no other leave existed. The whole thing about that is just simply perverse. If you need to take some time off to care for someone, you should be able to do it, and you shouldn't have to worry about your employment, is our view. So what's next? As I said, we are nowhere near the finished article. We want to get some groups together at the hospice who are for people who are employed carers. We know we have carers groups already. These are carers groups that generally will be interrelated with patients and other service users that come to the hospice. But I would love to have something in place where I can have a group of employees, and maybe a slightly wider employee group from other local organisations as well, that could come together at Kirkwood to discuss things. And maybe this forum's a way of facilitating that kind of work. And the other thing that I think is really important, especially in larger organisations, actually, is this concept of a carer's passport. Now, the whole idea here is that somebody will have written down in some kind of document that will be held securely and what have you, all their needs, everything that they've got going on in brief, so that if they have a new manager or they move departments or roles or whatever, that can be picked up, and they don't have to go through the rigmarole of having to explain their entire situation over and over again, because we know how that feels and it's not good for people. I think an important thing to realise there, I guess, is that every single caring situation is unique as the employee. And there ain't a one-size-fits-all. And what you agree with one employee might be completely different to what you agree with another employee. And for HR professionals, this gets us into a bit of a problem of consistency, because we're always told everything needs to be fair and consistent, everything must be the same. Well, actually, as long as you follow a consistent process with the individual and you're treating people fairly and with respect and with compassion, you're not going to pick up any issues. And all that's going to happen is that you're going to get a better understanding of what the individual's going through. They're going to feel supported, and they're not going to feel guilty, and you're probably going to get better productivity out of them, and you're not going to lose them. So that's all the good things that we've looked at and what we're trying to achieve. There's a way to go, but we're getting there. And I think I've got one more slide. I can't remember. Yes, I do. Right. This is the outcomes. We've been talking about a few of these already, and what I can't do is give you figures for how many hours have been taken and what's been done, but I do know that I've had at least 4 or 5 employees that have used carers leave instead of things like sick leave, instead of things like compassionate leave, because they perhaps wanted to save the compassionate leave back because a relative might die, and they don't want to worry that they've not got any compassionate leave left in the bank to be able to take for that employee. We've talked about the guilt and the sick leave. What was really important for us was an alignment with both our values and the support that we provide to patients and their families. And there feels sometimes like there's a bit of a disconnect. Like our service users and families get great support, they do. And sometimes I think we're not able, for one reason or another, to provide as good support for our employees, which is something that I want to resolve in time. And the idea there in that people can then provide even better care for the individuals that they're caring for. And when we looked at this, one of the questions I had back from our finance people was, well, how much is this going to cost? And I said, I don't know. Because I don't yet know who is a carer. I don't know how much leave they're going to have. But what I do know is that our short-term sick leave for things like stress and anxiety and other mental health issues is too high and it needs to drop. And I think actually what we are seeing is some people taking leave for a different reason than they really should be. Which is just a statistical thing, but it needs to change for the reasons we've mentioned. And the way I sold it to our exec team was very much on a values-based approach. And this is interesting because when we were looking at things like furlough, we took a values-based approach to our employees because we topped up their pay because it was the right thing to do, because we need them to come back and to be engaged and to be in a fit state mentally and financially to be able to do the work that they do. So when we have furlough staff, we've paid them in full. And this was the same. We want to do what's right and what feels right, what aligns with our values. So that was where the decision came from, rather than coming from a financial angle. And I think that's a slightly different way of thinking once you put things into a values context. And the final point I just wanted to make is that it allows managers to have a different kind of conversation. Instead of a why is your work not good enough conversation, it's actually, well, I understand that you might have things going on, let's talk about it, which is just a completely different, more positive, more inclusive approach for everybody involved. And it's a much easier conversation to have for the line manager as well. So in my opinion, everybody wins in that regard. So yeah, better conversations, more trust, better culture. And my next slide, please, I think is my thank you slide. So Kirkwood, we support life and we support our employees in doing that as well.